Thank you very much for this kind introduction. So I'll try to briefly present the work that Ante and me were doing. It's related to sustainable growth and related to the discussion that we have heard in the first session, actually. So I'll start by sharing the presentation. Give me a second. Okay, I hope you can see the presentation very well. Oops. Oh, it should. So, so basically the idea. Oops. So the idea of today's lecture is to talk a bit about the sustainable investments. How are they done now? About EU sustainable package. Then to talk about do we see any room for sustainability with Croatian financial sector and Croatian corporates? We'll talk about that in two subtopics. One is from the so-called demand side, that means from the financial sector side, and the second subtopic is we're going to discuss this from the supply side, meaning do companies want or can they change and how fast can they change to fulfill all these sustainability requirements that are probably ahead of them. And then we'll conclude. Maybe just as an introduction, why is this important for HANFA? So HANFA is basically a non-bank supervisor. So we supervise everything besides the banks in Croatian financial system. We even supervise banks when they do investment services. So pure banking is supervised by Croatian National Bank, and we pretty much supervise everything else. So sustainability is important for us because, as you might have heard in the previous lecture, is that basically the EU sustainability plan somehow puts forward the financial sector as in the center of this new plan, which I will explain also show later. So first, let's start with motivation. So motivation is rather simple. So we all know that there is a climate issue. So this is the picture from the cover of The Economist. And it's a very interesting graph, at least for me. It shows actually data on average temperature from 1850 to 2020, basically. And the blue years are the years where the average temperature was cooler than for the period of 1971 to 2000, and the red years are the ones where the average temperature was higher than the average of 1971 to 2000. And we can actually see that in last 3 or 4 decades, we have significant trend of global warming. So this is something that we cannot neglect. This graph actually shows the same thing, but maybe from a bit another perspective. And this is the average temperature, and it shows the average temperature on our planet since actually in last two centuries. Sorry, 20 centuries. So basically, you can see that in last century and a half, we have significant and fast warming of average temperature on our planet. So this is maybe just another, or maybe a more dramatic way to show how the Earth is changing. People want to do something. People want to do something about that, and especially younger generations are very interested in sustainability. If you read all this sociological data and research about younger generations, you'll see that among other things, ecology and sustainability and community is very, very important for them. This can also be seen in financial services. Actually, so this graph shows the proportion of sustainable investing relative to total investing. So if you look at this data, you'll see that in all major regions here, we have seen actually an increase in sustainability investing in last 6 years. The example here, Europe is maybe a bit different example. You can see actually that in Europe, proportion of sustainable investments is slowly decreasing, but this is not because of the fact that they are less popular in Europe, but this is because of the fact that the standards that the European financial services providers have started implementing are higher and higher as the years pass by. So something that was sustainable in 2014 is not sustainable anymore in 2018. That's why. So I would say this is something. This makes the picture a bit more realistic. So the next slide actually talks about what is actually green. Okay, so we said that this green finance is something that's been selling well, and this is let's say something that people want to buy. However, we still currently do not have any official standard that would say us, okay, this investment is green and this investment is not green. And even if we say that this is green, we cannot say actually how is this helping the climate or not helping the climate. So this is just to show that currently on the market there are many strategies, and let's say the most widely used one is so-called negative exclusionary screening. That will basically mean that the investment companies would say, okay, we are not going to invest in oil, we are not going to invest in thermal power generating plants, we're not going to invest in some dirty activities. However, everything else we can invest to. Then, so this is, let's say, I would say, very light approach. And this was actually one of the problems why European Union has decided to go about on this sustainability plan. First of all, obviously, the primary or original motivation was the fact that our planet is changing, and is changing relatively fast in recent years. So European Commission thought that something had to be done about that, and they somehow put the financial sector, specifically non-bank financial sector, into center of this change by basically saying that investments done by the financial service providers have to include these sustainability notions while they're done. So basically, the European Commission says when you're investing money for your clients, you need to include sustainability issues and see whether this is going to be and see how this investment impacting the planet, the emissions, and so on. In order to do that, a lot of regulation had to be drawn. First, you have to define what is green, what is not. This is something that's basically somehow behind us, most of it. There are still some implementing acts remaining to be drawn up, but most of this is behind us, and the implementation of this plan actually starts in March of next year, 10th of March to be more precise. So this is just somehow to show the key challenges which are addressed by this EU action plan. I will not go now into this because of this time limit, in order to leave the time for other colleagues as well. So this slide shows the view from Croatia. So we said that non-banking financial services providers are basically in the core of this plan. And here we have just been looking at how big is this actually? How much can we expect that these financial providers change? Okay, so this table basically shows the all financial services intermediaries in Croatia, including banks, and these green rows are actually rows where let's say the financial service providers that are the main target of the EU plan are shown. So basically, if you look at the share of GDP, this is something around 47% of GDP is targeted with this plan. So this is, I would say, this is a significant amount of money if you look at just a notional amount here. However, what's happening actually with this EU plan, that it's so this is a so-called, the plan has one major idea behind it. The first idea is that it's comply or explain. So basically it says, okay, you should invest following green rules or sustainable rules. However, if you do not do that, you have to notify your clients about that. So this is one, I would say, so this is, let's say, somehow, it's not like ordering, but it's somehow pushing the providers to go into this direction. However, the second part of the plan is something that says that actually the domestic, the pension system is except the one that's covered by European regulation, which is not that significant in most of the member states, is actually left out. So the member states can adopt this plan for pension systems as well. However, this is not obligatory. This is something that each member state will decide on its own. And our view here is actually that these pension funds, if you look at the long-term investments, and especially equity investments, which are the most important for this for changing the let's say for changing the economy, because the companies operate in the economy, they have suppliers, they produce products, and so basically these most important players, and these are the pension funds, these most important long-term players could be left out. So this basically somehow points the way that maybe national administrations should work towards including pension funds into this plan, although this is not obligatory at the, let's say, at the EU level. This graph basically shows that pension funds are important players in most of the in almost, I mean, if you take out the bank deposits, the pension savings is the most important part of the saving in part of the financial part of the housing financial wealth throughout the EU. So the situation in Croatia, I mentioned 2 slides ago, basically how is this at a global level. But what is also interesting to see, if we talk about pension funds, again, pension funds are actually the biggest equity investors in Croatia. So basically they do, if you look at investments by financial service providers, they do roughly 80% of the equity investments is done via pension funds. So, and if you look this on another way, if you try to see, let's say, how important are these pension fund investments, which is actually shown in this table. So this table shows the top 10 domestic equity investments by pension funds. So you'll see that basically they control 70% of GDP with their top domestic companies. If you I mean, how did we get to this 70% of GDP? If we compare the total sales of these companies, total revenue, which is, let's say, component that can be compared to GDP, we see basically that these 10 companies actually form 17% of gross domestic product each year with their sales. So this is, I would say, important leverage. And if pension funds were to be included in this new, again, this would have to be a Croatian specific regulation. They could be a significant driver for a change of domestic economy. So this was from the demand side. So now I'm going to look at it from the supply side. Actually, do companies want to change, and can they change? The question is, so when financial services providers start investing their clients' funds into companies, in order to do so, they're going to need to have some data about companies. However, European regulation does not foresee currently changing of non-financial reporting directives. There are some plans, but these plans are, let's say, 2 or 3 years in advance from now, and we still don't know what's actually going to happen. Here in this part of the paper, we actually wanted to assess whether companies can prepare, or maybe they are already prepared for this non-financial reporting. So in order to do that, we used this only source of data that we had. That was actually National Review Report on Sustainability Reporting, which was done in 2015. So that was a survey that included 1,400 companies. The response rate was rather low, about 7%. However, we have managed to draw some, I would say, major conclusions from this report to assess the state of corporate non-financial reporting at that point of time. So basically, the main conclusions are that large companies and listed companies had much higher interest in survey than micro and small companies. Second, Croatian companies are overall familiar with the idea of corporate social responsibility concept. This is 98% of the respondents said that. And almost all large companies report on CSR issues. 78% of the companies actually also implement CSR. However, we don't know how are they implementing this and how serious is this, let's say. our guess is that probably 25% of the companies are, let's say, more serious about that. Why? Because these are the companies that reported and said that they already basically have specific departments that deal with this CSR, corporate social responsibility issues. Maybe just to conclude on this part, I think that from the supply side, we have significant potential, but we think that maybe we think that reporting, especially reporting for listed companies, should be introduced in order to enable investors to assess sustainability of those listed companies. And now I'm coming to the conclusion. So basically, just to repeat shortly what I have said of the main ideas. We know that climate change already has significant impact on human society, and it is expected that this trend will continue. Public is aware of this, and many want to contribute to that. And we have seen this from the data on sales of let's say green financial products. We also know that EU, in order to tackle these sustainability issues, the EU has set an ambitious goal to integrate them in investment analysis. The idea behind the EU plan is that this is actually a comply or explain approach. I would say maybe not comply or I mean, it is comply or explain, and somehow, but it's also a name and shame. So if you do not do it, you're going to have to write it write it everywhere. We are not using sustainability issues. We are not dwelling into these issues and so on. So it's comply or explain, yes, but it's also name and shame who is not doing it. What is unfortunate, I would say, that important parts of the plan are optional, and this is actually pension savings, which are the long-term savings, which represent significant part of household wealth. Probably the most important part of household wealth throughout the EU, except the deposits. So we think this is something that member states should or could introduce in order to make the economy more sustainable. And what is also unfortunate with this plan, and that is that regulation regarding company data is lagging. That this basically creates problems for investment managers. So they have to invest into green companies or into sustainable projects, but they're not sure how to measure this. There are some private service providers, obviously, but in terms of reporting, at least in Croatian example, this reporting is still in its early stages. And also one of our conclusions in the paper is also that it will be worthwhile to motivate listed companies for additional sustainability reporting. This is something that we have also heard in the previous session, that some countries went towards the hard law examples. This is our proposal here is to introduce some sort of a soft law that can be also done by supervisor. That this is something that we are currently discussing within HANFA, whether to do something like that, basically to recommend all listed companies and to recommend the stock exchange to introduce sustainability reporting for listed companies, especially those in most important quotations, let's say, on the market. So this is all from me. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing. Yes, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridzak. This was really interesting. So, if I would dare to say that maybe the biggest challenge here is to find the right balance when making finance green. How much to put pressure from top? So let's say to force certain investors to invest green, and on the other hand, also to educate public. So some bottom-up approach, I would say that they actually buy green. So how to find the right balance? I would dare to say that this is maybe the key challenge here for the future. Okay, thank you very much.